Welcome to worship on this Palm Sunday. I'm Pastor Susie Hutchison, and this is not my real voice. It's a fake one. I picked it up from some frog I found on the way here. I was out in the cold with the kids playing Easter eggs yesterday, and this is what I woke up with. I've been tested. I do not have COVID. All is good. I extend to you a welcome, as Pastor Bob offered earlier. We all know that Easter joy is just on the horizon. But like so many other joyful experiences, there are some hard things to go through before we get to experience that joy. The church faces this challenge every year during Holy Week. We have this Palm Sunday celebration where Jesus arrives into Jerusalem, and then next Sunday, out of nowhere, we shout, "Up from the grave, he arose!" Because when we limit our Christian formation to Sunday only, we don't have to walk through the difficult things of this week. That's why we offer those services on Thursday and Friday at 7:30 of this week. We hope that if you participate in them, the richness of that Easter joy will be deepened. Now, those of us here who have the joy of having grown children, we know what it's like to have to go through tough things to get to that joy. We went through the terrible 2s, we went through the threatening 3s, and we went through the very trying teens before we arrived at the joy of watching their lives unfold fully. Those among us who have the joy of a 5-year chip from AA or from NA had to go through the DTs, the doubts, and a whole lot of really desperate moments to arrive at the joy of holding that coin. And those who have rung the bell in the hallway of an oncology ward had to go through fear and pharmaceuticals and even brutal fighting to understand the joy of that bell. You see, otherwise it's just a lovely adult, a little chip of metal with the sound of a bell ringing. They only take on meaning when we know the journey that it takes to get there. Today we begin a journey of descent for Jesus. It begins on the Mount of Olives and winds through Good Friday. If you've had the opportunity to go on a Holy Land trip, and if you get one, take it. But you'll know that the Mount of Olives is a large hill outside the city walls of Jerusalem. From that spot on Mount of Olives, you can look down onto the city and you can see the sprawling cemetery that lies just outside the walls. You can see the site of the Holy Temple. You can see the narrow roadways and the squares of what was once a great metropolis. Of course, in Jesus' day, the infamous gold-domed mosque is where the Jewish temple would have been. And those tall contemporary buildings in the background, well, they weren't there yet. In descending from the mount, Jesus willingly journeys from a place where all the world is at his feet into the city where all of humanity's sins and struggles will intersect with his life. It's a humble and even humiliating downward mobility. From the top of the mount, Jesus likely saw this crowd gathering. He could have commanded a steed like Herod would ride into town. He could descend in great fashion and with great strength, but instead, Jesus rides a colt down the descending roadway. He opts out of the powerful and he embraces the humble. Jesus' entry into the city is designed to tell the people who have gathered there that he is with them. He is one of them. And in response, they wave their palm branches. At the time, this waving palm branches was often done at victory parades for those people returning from battle. So might not have been that odd that they would do this for Jesus. You see, they thought that Jesus had come to overthrow the reign of the Roman Empire. So his descent into Jerusalem as pilgrims at this time, when pilgrims from all around the world were entering Jerusalem for the Passover celebration, it looks an awful lot like their salvation was arriving. Just not the salvation they thought. In addition, the fronds of the palms were also used for a Jewish holiday called Sukkot, which this is a time of thanksgiving for all of the provisions that God gives the Israelites in their desert journey with Moses. During Sukkot, the Jewish people build a booth or a temporary shelter, and for 7 days they pray in this shelter, they eat in this shelter, and some families even sleep in this shelter. Sometimes you can still see them in devout Jewish homes in their backyards or there. But they would pray using palms mixed with citrus branches and willow and myrtle. You see, whether it's in victory or in thanksgiving or in prayer, people gathered with palms. And when Jesus enters Jerusalem, they wave their palms. They cheer in anticipation of his triumph. Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. But this cheer was dangerous for Jesus. The Pharisees warn him, but Jesus knows that his fate is already sealed. He knows that he is reaching the bottom of his descent. And in response to this warning, Jesus gives the most interesting response. I tell you, if they were silent, the stones would shout. You see, salvation is not merely good news for the mighty kings, the rulers of the temple, or the nearly sinless folks. Salvation is good news for average people with average problems and average sins. Salvation is good news for the lepers and for the bleeding and for the demon-possessed, for those whose sins are unspeakable, and for all people who are outcasts. Salvation is good news, not just for humanity, but for all of creation. Salvation is for the animals and the plants and even the lowliest forms of nature. The stones would shout. Jesus descends from the hilltop to the valley. Jesus descends from his place among the kings to his place among the enslaved. Jesus descends from a place among the priests to a place among the sinners. Jesus descends from heaven to earth and even to the grave. You see, Jesus does not reject us when we cast blame on God for the failings of this world. Jesus doesn't even flinch when we lament the death of a loved one. Jesus does not turn away when we awaken from the stupor of excess, whether that's excess spending, drinking, eating, or controlling whatever. Jesus does not betray us when we betray him. And Jesus does not deny us when we deny him. We cannot hit a bottom too low for Jesus to travel with us. Wherever we find ourselves today, whether it is on the top of that mount with the world at our feet or huddled at some rocky bottom, Jesus knows our pain and is with us. It's a journey he's taken, and it's a journey he takes over and over again with us. It's a journey that continues. Thanks be to God. Amen.